And welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me is Gary Stein, my usual host on our Thursday night escapades into the world of sports newsmakers. Tonight is a Wednesday night, and there's a reason for that. But anyway, joining us tonight, and we're going to get to him in just a minute, is Towson University's new athletic director, Steve Eigenbrot. And Steve will join us just in a second after I tell you some good things about the Costas Inn. Everybody in town knows the Costas Inn is one of the best places to go for steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, steaks, salads, whatever you want to eat. And usually you watch a sporting event there live, or in the old days, some live music. But the Costas Inn now has really stepped up their game in curbside pickup, or if you want to call it takeout. Go check out their menu, CostasInn.com. You won't regret it. Great place to pick up your food, located at 4100 North Point Boulevard. Phone number 410-477-1975. And now, without further ado, is Dr. Steve Eigenbrot. And Steve, you prefer to be called Steve, don't you?
That's correct.
All right. So we'll start off by welcoming you in. That's what we'll call you. And we're going to congratulate you on this hire by Kim Schatzel and the committee, the search committee over at Towson University. We're going to talk about some big picture college stuff, but I got to hit you with this. Coach Diane Richardson is one of our favorite guests, a terrific coach, and she just got a big opportunity at Temple. You started, actually, I know you were hired February 14th was the announcement. Your start date was March 28th. April 5th, you find out that one of your coaches is gone. Did you have any inkling that that she was being wooed by Temple, or did this blindside you?
If the answer can be both, it was probably that. Their athletics director did call me, I think it was on Thursday, and told me that they had an opening, which I obviously was aware of, and was not expecting a call from him or to hear that they wanted to talk to Coach Rich. But obviously had a great season. While my hiring date and my start date that you mentioned were correct, I did get a chance. Coach Rich was on my search committee. And then while I was still in South Carolina Gamecock, I actually flew to Philly to watch the CAA tournament. So got a chance to be there and be a part of that and support her and our young ladies, which was a really great experience for me as the incoming AD. So he called me on Thursday and said that. And then I didn't hear the word Temple from anyone until Tuesday morning, in which time I heard that Coach Rich had been offered the job and was going to accept it. So obviously a tough loss for our department, because Coach Rich really kind of got this thing going. And I know how much respect she had in this community for sure. But again, she left this place a lot better than she found it. Yeah, and part of that weekend was also, you got to remember, men's and women's basketball, the Final Four weekend, everything kind of shuts down. Coaches go there, they do professional development. And so that was also part of that time period. So Coach Rich, I think she was in Minnie, and she actually left and flew to Temple to do an interview with their group. And that's kind of how part of that, all that happened. Pretty crazy 4 days, I'm sure, in her life. But it's probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B for me.
So do you is your modus of operandi that you have a list ready for every coaching position you have, possible replacements? And was Laura Harper on that list?
Well, I think a guy in my position that's been doing their job for more than a week, the answer should be yes, or at least you have some guiding principles or, some conversation with people. And typically there's a sport administrator involved in overseeing a sport. So whether the AD has that list or the sport administrator does, I think that's kind of known as a best practice. But in this day and age, things change so quickly in that space. But as somebody that just rolled into this position, the answer to that would have been a hard no for me, if I'm going to be honest. But Coach Harper and I have a couple data points in our background of familiarity, and moreover, kind of having developed the profile of what was important at this institution from those people that hired me. I think that mattered a lot. And I was also fortunate enough to use an executive search firm, and it was the same firm that the institution used to hire me. The University of Maryland system has a approved list of search firms. So that group came with a lot of equity and a lot of understanding of Towson University, which I think also helped us. Coach Harper was a name that I think we brought to the table before they did, but I have no doubt that they were going to bring it to the table as well. So she was on the short list, but it was not a very well-developed one, and that I hadn't poured over it. I'm going to be honest with you about that.
So before I turn you over to Gary Stein for a couple questions, so let's get back to what would have normally been my first question, which was, what about this job was attractive to Steve Eigenbrot?
To me or Coach Harper?
To you.
Oh,
that would have been my first question for you. Was what was attractive about this job, Towson University AD, for you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of it. I think if you sit in my shoes and you say, all right, there's 10 boxes, the next AD job that you look for, if it checks 7 of them, you feel really good about it, right? I think this one kind of went above and beyond the mark. And some of those marks you don't really know until you get the opportunity to actually come and interview. And you mentioned Dr. Schatzel earlier. Obviously, very thankful for her involvement in the process and the fact that the committee and her were gracious enough to select me. But I think hearing from her and her vision for this institution, seeing the work that's been done, understanding the track record of success that we have had over the years. When I was a high school student athlete, Towson was one of the schools that was on my list. I unfortunately had an injury. I hurt my liver when I was in high school, which changed my trajectory as a student athlete. But it's always a school I've watched. I was fortunate enough to go to University of Maryland system institution. So I'm familiar with this area. I watched it from afar. I've watched people mutilate the name and say things like Towson State. And, to me, that was always kind of surprising because I kind of knew what this institution was. I certainly don't know it as well as I do today, and I still have a lot to learn. But I felt like this was a school where its opportunity to be successful, especially considering the shifting landscape of the CAA, way outweighs its reputation, certainly its national reputation. And that's a marketing and branding challenge that's much better than trying to fix an institution that has really poor facilities or no track record of success, so on and so forth. So, it's very much a homecoming for me too. My family all lives between Northern Virginia and Philadelphia. So this has been awesome. I have a 1-year-old daughter. My parents have been around. I saw them twice last week. There were plenty of years at South Carolina or when I worked at UNLV where I probably wouldn't see them twice in 3 years. So that's been a lot of fun, and having a young child and having my parents be a part of that, and my sisters and brother. So there's, to me, it checks all the boxes. And our competition facilities. If you're an AD and you're coming in and you think, all right, look, we got to raise $100 million to get our competition facilities where they need to be. That's not the case. I'm sitting here in the beautiful Towson Center, and it's got some good bones. I think I'm in the part of the building that the good bones are made obvious. There's probably some work that we need to do in this facility, but CQ Arena, great opportunity to really recruit student athletes too. So, and then who it is as an institution, right? We're an institution on the rise. The student athlete experience is one that's kind of comprehensive. It's the student and the athlete piece. What we do in the classrooms, what we do in the community with community service. I didn't really feel like there was a box that couldn't be checked. And, I didn't think that Alabama was going to call tomorrow and ask Al from either AD job. So to me, this felt like a great opportunity that was really the next stepping stone in my career. And me and my family are very fortunate for it.
Gary, you go ahead and take 3 questions now, because I got 3.
I hope I have 3 to give, but absolutely. Steve, let me ask you this. I was looking through the bio, that they posted on TowsonTigers.com, and I noticed, and this may be natural and normal, but I noticed that you were appointed the new athletics director, obviously, congratulations, but also to the president's cabinet. And I'm wondering, A, what that means exactly, number 1. And number 2, is that something different? Like how did that all come about?
Yep. So I think it's a best practice. I don't know that I do know there are some institutions where the athletics director does not sit on the president's cabinet. The president's cabinet, for all intents and purposes, the number may vary. It's probably somewhere between 8 and 14, and it's the exactly what you think it would be. It's the people that the president leans on to kind of run the university. So it's the vice presidents. A lot of athletic directors that have that opportunity may be also called vice presidents for athletics, because the peers on that group are really the VPs that run the school. And no, I mean, there's some institutions in our conference where the athletics director might not even report to the institutional president. But again, I feel like it's a best practice. It was certainly one of the questions that I had to Dr. Kim when I was hired about, okay, how do I fit into the leadership of the university? And then what does that mean in terms of my peer group and how often are we meeting and talking about things? One of the complicated things about Towson that I'm learning and I think we're going to have a fun time working through is at South Carolina, we had a $130 million budget. We had as many coaches and student athletes as we have here, and we're trying to do it with a $30 million budget. And that doesn't mean you can't provide a good experience for those student athletes, but it means you need to be really wise and really resourceful. And to me, really leaning on those counterparts on campus to make sure that they understand the investment in intercollegiate athletics and how it may help their unit and how it really can become the front porch of the university. So absent of that opportunity to be on that cabinet, I think it would be really, really hard to, be involved in some of those conversations that need to be had at a school where you're trying to support a great experience for almost 600 kids and doing it with a $30 million budget.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, actually. It's interesting you say that because, you spent, 10 or 12 years at the University of South Carolina down in Columbia, one of the greatest football venues in the country, one of the biggest football venues in the country, 82,000 plus Williams-Brice Stadium. And of course, football teams had a lot of success, basketball team as well. And so now you come to Towson, which in its own right, as you say, is a great institution, but clearly not to that level. So my question is, how do you adjust going from that, big D1 experience, Power 5, top football program, beat Alabama first time in history in your first year, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to what you have at Towson, which is certainly terrific, but at a different level?
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna ignore your question intentionally, and we'll go back to it. I think part of the thing that I'm most excited about is trying to bring that level of excitement to TU. And what does that mean? Is that viable? I don't necessarily know, but there are a lot of people that walk around throughout the state of South Carolina that think the coolest thing in the world is being a South Carolina Gamecock. And we can have a very short conversation about all the professional teams in that state, and that's what lends itself a lot to the South Carolina and the Clemson, getting a fair amount of everyone's discretionary income and why it's so cool. But to me, Towson University, being a Towson Tiger, can be just as cool. Look at Gonzaga and the success they're having at basketball. I don't think people walk around that campus, not Gonzaga in DC, but the Gonzaga in Washington State, right?
Yeah,
I don't think that those people on that campus are like, we're just a mid-major. Yeah, we are who we are, but to me, one of the things I'm excited about doing is trying to develop a little bit of swagger, a little bit of confidence in that. If in this building, I'm sitting in the Towson Center right now. If we all don't think that being a Towson Tiger is the coolest thing in the world, then how are we going to commit our student athletes and then the people of Towson and Rogers Ford and then into Baltimore County and into the city? So to me, I wasn't a big Twitter guy when I was in a former institution. There was too many knuckleheads out there that would every time you lose, you should fire the AD, you should fire the coach. And that was fine because, great passion, great interest, and it just is a necessary kind of part of the situation. I didn't have to be engaged. The way I view my role here is that I got to be a cheerleader. And after we lose a basketball game or football game, there may not be a whole lot of nasty people on Twitter, but like those nasty people on Twitter, they cared enough to send a tweet at my old institution. And we got to make sure that we're getting more people engaged and thinking about Towson University. Someone asked me at my press conference, they said, hey, can you make Towson the rival for the University of Maryland? And I said, sure. Next question. But to me, like that I'm, University of Maryland's a great school, College Park, they got their own thing going on, but like, I think we can be confident in that being a Towson Tiger is cool. And I want to try and bring my experience from that institution. I mean, UNLV, similar deal, right? UNLV, I was there. We celebrated our 50th anniversary as an institution. Athletics put that school on the map.
Absolutely.
Towson's been on the map, right? And it was, Maryland normal school and all the iterations that it's been. But where we are right now with the CAA and its trajectory moving forward, I think we have a beautiful next chapter to be written. And I think that there's something that can be brought from that Maryland experience here while I'm sorry, Maryland, that South Carolina experience, while we may never be the University of South Carolina, I think we can walk around this building really proud of the the Towson on our chest. And I think that's an opportunity that we need to seize. And there's some other logistical things that we need to work on as well to get people feeling that way beyond this building. But it starts here.
What are the most important things that you're working on right now?
Well, I just interviewed a swim coach, so I'd put that up there on the list because we need to get a full cadre of coaches in here. But I'll say this, for next season, we're about to march into the summer months. And I think the engagement piece and being intentional about what it is that we're trying to do and how we're trying to evaluate it, trying to engage the community, trying to engage our alums, trying to engage our students especially. I mentioned the kind of logistical hurdles. I think one of the things that Dr. Kim and I saw eye to eye on is that South Campus, what you see of South Campus from Osler is something that, 5-10 years down the road, I think we need to be in a different place. The connectivity from the main part of our campus to, the athletics portion. The best version of intercollegiate athletics is when it is a part of, not apart from the higher education mission. And while I think we wrap our arms at this school around the student part of the student athlete, and I've only been here 7 weeks, so that's not a Steve thing. That's a Towson thing. We do a really good job of it. But the geographical constraints, I got hired on a Tuesday, flew home on a Wednesday, and on Thursday, our men's basketball team played at UNC Wilmington, nationally broadcast game, CBS Sports, and there was a number of Towson donors that in February were smart enough to make a trip to North Carolina and South Carolina to get some of that good weather and go golfing and have a good time. And a number of people said, hey, you're the new AD, like, see how crazy this is? You got all these kids from Wilmington. The gym is packed. It's crazy. We need to do this at CQ Arena. And at the time, I'd only been here for 1 day. I hadn't seen a game in CQ yet. And I'm anxious to try and solve the student component because I think the long-term dividends of intercollegiate athletics playing a more involved role in the lives of our current students will help us get to where we want to be in 10, 20, 30 years down the road. But those kids were falling out of their dorms in Wilmington. There's not a whole lot of things to do in Wilmington. You can go to the beach, or you can go to the ball game. And where their arena is located, right next to their dorms. I mean, it's too easy not to need a CBS nationally broadcast sport, but we got to try and figure out a way down the road to make this beautiful part of campus much more a part of the Towson community, so that the things I talked about before, not just from a student perspective, but also the people that live in this community and call it home think, I'm going to go support my hometown team.
Gotcha.
Steve, one of the things in looking up some of the things you worked on at South Carolina, you were part of raising $22.5 million for renovations to Williams Brice Stadium. You also led a $248 million campaign and fundraising, a $50 million fundraising effort for the Family Football Operations Center at South Carolina. That sounds like an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time. Where will you be part of the fundraising machinery at Towson for athletics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how much will you have to put the same amount of time into that you did down there? And I know you had a position initially, you were the assistant director of major grants down there, but will you have a lot of time dedicated to that? And please don't give me a one-word answer.
Yeah, no, I will be involved. I certainly won't have as much time as I did in my previous position. I think one of the things that, as you're doing the kind of SWOT analysis and you come into a new institution, one of the opportunities I think we have to continue building on, current strength. We've been doing fundraising at Towson for the last decade, much better as an institution, as an athletics department. We're fortunate enough to have a great leader of our fundraising team, and Danny Crowley, who knows a lot of people played football here.
Danny's a great asset for you.
Yeah, 1,000%. And he's been a prince in terms of trying to help me hit the ground running, get me in front of donors. I had those 5 weeks where I was kind of wrapping up my time at South Carolina, working on one of those capital projects, and also at night or on the weekends making phone calls to donors that Danny gave me. So to me, I think one of the good things about fundraising, my family's not here yet. They haven't moved from South Carolina, so I've got about another month until they show up. And the nights and weekends, the opportunities to engage donors and make those phone calls. I think fundraising. I came from a background where our athletics director was our old baseball coach, and he had a great acumen for running the athletics department. But he had run his own foundation previously. He was a really good fundraiser, and I got to see from him how he kind of folded what I did as a fundraiser into his life as an athletics director. And I think the bottom line is, as an AD, you get pulled in a lot of directions, and you got to make priorities and build people, put people around you in the areas that you're not as strong, that are capable. So obviously, I wrote my PhD about higher ed and academic achievement, but Jeff Gordon, what he does in our academic center, work with our student athletes, he's got skills and abilities that far lap mine. Now, I need to be there for Jeff Gordon when he needs help, or we have an issue with a student athlete or academic success or APR or otherwise. But, I can certainly lean into, Dan and his operation and make a phone call to call a donor and thank him for a gift, or, hey, we're going to come down and see you when we're down in Charleston, or whatever that needs to look like. Without a doubt. I mean, I was fortunate enough to learn from a lot of great people in my past as a fundraiser. Certainly come at this from a external perspective, overseeing ticket sales and sponsorship and all that stuff. That's been a part of my life for a long time. But I think I've got to be emotionally intelligent and realize the things that I'm good at and things that I'm not, and then try and find people to put around me that can help. Rising tide lifts all boats.
That's the path to success. Gary?
Steve, it's interesting. You become an athletic director for the first time in your career at what I think is a really interesting time to be an athletic director. And that is the changing face of college sports. I mean, whether you're in a Power 5 conference or not, it doesn't really matter. The name, image, and likeness, the NIL, the transfer portal, there's all these new things that seem to be just coming bam, 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 right at you now. And I'm just wondering, and you really don't have a lot of experience with it, because nobody has really a lot of experience with it. So how do you navigate this?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the things that helped me find some peace of mind.
And Steve, let me interrupt. Should you have gotten
Sure.
more money because you had to deal with those couple of things?
I don't think so. One of the things that made this job, quite honestly, more attractive is exactly what you just identified in terms of the shifting landscape. Probably more about the name, image, likeness, but also you didn't mention Alston, cost of attendance, and so on and so forth. I think, as it relates to that, while individually, I'm not here to say that any of those things were a bad thing for college athletics. I feel like rather than taking the time to slow down and focus on what we're about at our core, at the high major level, we started making very reactionary decisions. And I found myself at my old institution, because of the way the landscape was shifting. We sat there in our leadership team, our senior staff, and we said, okay, name, image, likeness, we got to do something. Here are our options. A, that's that. I don't like that. B, oh, that's terrible. C, no way we're going to do that. D, And then okay, now we got to pick one of those four, right? And we all knew that we didn't get into this industry to help student athletes negotiate deals. I mean, the Olympic model on its face, okay, kids, it's kind of sponsorship deal. I got no problem with that. Hand to God, I really don't. But in the Olympic model, you're an American athlete and you're going to cut a sponsorship deal with Home Depot. What you're not going to go do is go play for China if they don't sign you, right? So on its face, monetizing your abilities, it's fine. But I worked in fundraising long enough to know what is important to boosters and to donors and what that world looks like. And it was surprising to no one that we found ourselves in this place. So do those things not exist at Towson? No, they're here. Towson, we're 1,000%, we're in the middle of it. But to me, the volumes turned down a little bit. And as we try and shake these things out, the transfer portal is alive and well. It's crazy. And I think one of the things that I bring to the table here is having worked pretty closely with some of the elite programs at South Carolina, having worked with coaches on, hey, growing and adjusting through the transfer portal, the resources that we were able to bring in to help our coaches deal with that. Because, I mean, really, at the end of the day, the last 5-6 years, a lot of them had to reimagine how it is that they run their sport program, what decisions you made 20 years ago when I was a kid playing sports and the coach was like, hey, suck it up, Buttercup. There's nothing else you can do with it. We're not in that day and age. And I don't know that 20 years ago we were in a better place, but I know if you approach this sport today like that, it's not going to work and you're going to be out of a job. So coming from a place like South Carolina, you had a $130 million budget and we were able to provide our coaches with some tools. And I got to sit in the room and hear about some of those things. And I had a long conversation with Coach Scurry today about, the transfer portal, name, image, likeness, and what we're trying to do for men's and women's basketball. The crazy thing is that our conversations from 7 weeks ago, just in the last 10 days, the NCAA came out and they said, hey, all along, we didn't want you to do this to induce recruits. And we saw a lot of you have these groups come together that very clearly were developed to support one institution and one institution only. We told you not to do that. Now we're going to come get you. So I'm thankful that we're not at one of those institutions, right? But at the same token, we need to keep having conversations. And at the end of those conversations, I feel like I could sleep at night because at the end of the day, we are trying to do the right thing for the student athlete. And the landscape is challenging. It's not like what anyone else was used to in the last 10 years. But if you don't adjust in this day and age, then you're going to lead yourself to, being obsolete. So it's where we are.
Steve, every time I've talked to Mike Gathigan over the past 5 weeks or so, he's always said, well, Steve's at this event. This is before you were even hired. I mean, in other words, you've been going around really getting to know what the product is. Why did you think that was so important to do, to be at those games?
Yeah. Well, the games especially, I was jacked up to get here and be a part of this. But, I really think about my role as the athletics director. Hopefully you can play this interview back and I didn't say the word I or me as much as I said the word we or us, because I said this to our staff the other day. I like to think we're a pyramid, right? And the standing on the point, and the student athletes are at the top of the pyramid because they're the most important. And there's also the most of them. And then I'm kind of at the bottom because I'm the least important. But in the same token, if I'm not strong, if I don't understand what's going on, if I don't understand everything that's kind of above me, then the pyramid falls over. So I really feel like whether it's donors, alumni, our coaches, I got to get those perspectives. And one of the things that's worked out over the last 6 or 7 weeks, I feel like with the hiring of Coach Harper and some other internal things we've had to work through, we're gonna have to hire 3 coaches this spring, including her. The speed of trust, right? When I'm sitting and going around and listening and talking to people, you can learn a lot, but you can learn a lot more when you're trying to hire a coach. When you're testing the systems, when you're dealing with an adverse situation, you find out who's in the foxhole with you and who's not. So I think that my mindset was I got to listen. I was fortunate enough that June 30 is kind of the end of a fiscal year. July 1, the calendar flips in higher ed. August 1, things start to kind of really feel like they're happening. So I didn't come in here. Dr. Schatzel was very clear. Hey, your athletics department's not in a bad shape. COVID, yes. Financial concerns, sure, there's a little bit, but ultimately with Towson's trajectory as an institution, we're pretty good there. So don't feel like you need to come in here and make some crazy changes or do anything. I'm here to support you, but make sure you get a firm understanding of what this place is all about. And that's really kind of what I've been committed to doing. And again, I think that's been exacerbated by some of the challenges of the last 6 or 7 weeks. None of them have been like, oh my gosh, this place is so wacky or screwed up, but it's been, an opportunity to you put your feet to the fire and you kind of find some things out.
I've got one more sort of question about your name and the brewery in town, but I do want to ask you real quick. I do want to ask you about, you mentioned Dan Crowley and how fortunate you are to have him. You've known Mike Gathigan now about 6 or 7 weeks. Gary and I know Gath pretty well. You feel pretty fortunate to have somebody with you that knows the institution the way he does?
Yeah, no as an institution, that's incredibly valuable, and it's hard to replace the human capital side of it. But also, the professionalism that Mike brings to the table every day. You can't teach give a hoot, and Mike gives a lot of hoots. Mike, he's
He does.
I say to people all the time, there's a reason why we're doing this right now, and it's 8:30, and I'm not complaining about it because it's a lifestyle, not a job. Like, this is fun.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to interviewing our swimming candidate. Right? I mean, to me, Mike approaches the job with that kind of zeal. You don't put in as many hours as Mike without. I mean, people talk about work-life balance. If that's a part of the conversation in college athletics, you kind of miss the boat because there isn't a whole lot of it. You can do some things, and I got a 1-year-old, and I got to get better at that. But really, at the end of the day, this has got to be fun for you, and you got to be all in. And I mean, you look up all in the dictionary, you're not going to see Dabo Sweeney. You're going to see Mike Gaffigan.
Gary, you got one more, and then I'll ask my question about the Eigenbrot name.
Sure, no problem. I can't wait for that question, by the way. And I'm sure Steve can't either. Steve, let's talk about the fan for a minute. The Towson fan that is a Towson fan already, or maybe the basketball or football fan that maybe isn't a Towson fan yet, that you want to become a Towson fan. From a fan experience perspective, anything going to change? Like, what will be different for the fan now that Steve Eigenbrot is the athletic director?
Well, there's a couple answers to that question that we're working on that I'm not sure I'm ready to divulge yet. I will say this much: we are replacing the video board in United Stadium, so that should be a new part of the fan experience for next year. There are also a number of other things that we have in the works in terms of trying to beef up the tailgating experience for football. It's one of those things we just talked about. Dan and Mike, Kyle, Tricia, Devon, our leadership team, they've done a lot to educate me. Until you're in the space and you've gone through a football game, I feel a little bit like I'm kind of in the dark here still. But trying to do some creative things on Auburn Drive is definitely on the plate. We've talked about trying to look to work with our catering partner to possibly add some adult beverages to the mix down the road here. So to me, I think being competitive for people's entertainment dollars, understanding, I mean, coming at this from the Southeastern Conference perspective, I can hear people talk about the woes of Towson or what we've done well or what we haven't done well. But at Alabama, they were worried about the students not coming to games, them not selling out, people leaving at halftime. And we were worried about South Carolina too. So I think we can all have a little peace of mind that what it takes to get somebody to come off their couch, to leave their flat screen TV, their clean bathroom, their cheap beer, you got to develop a better program. And I don't know enough after 7 weeks to understand what that program specific to Towson needs to be moving forward. But I think that one of the things that I've seen is that our team, we've tried really, really hard with ticket sales. I don't know we've made the right decisions all the time there, but there's energy and effort going into that. Corporate sponsorship, we're hitting all-time levels. We're coming out of a pandemic. We have an opportunity, I think, to put this thing together and package it and make it feel a little bit different. Some part because it just hadn't been around for the last couple of years. But to me, the student piece is really the one that I think I'm encouraged about our opportunity to have some energy and efforts. Dr. Schatzel, her energy toward the end of basketball season while we were doing so well on the men's and women's side, trying to get more kids to come out, like the all-in experience. And I've heard it from all my president cabinet colleagues. Like, there's just such a thriving desire for us to be more successful in that space, because I do think that once the current students are more engaged with the product, it becomes more fun for the alums and for your donors and fans to be a part of it. So again, I don't know that I gave you some operational things we're working on for the fall, and I don't know that that's going to change this fall, but it's definitely something that we're going to kick around a lot this summer and trying to make sure that we're coming up a little bit higher on too. And then I also think, CQ Arena, our fields are this part of campus. We need to get people with heartbeats here that aren't student athletes on a more regular basis. So I know the Blast is doing their thing, concerts, hosting some camps. This summer we're going to have the World Lacrosse, women's World Lacrosse
yeah.
here, and that's going to be an amazing opportunity to showcase Towson to not just the world, but also it's not just the country, but also the world. So continuing to build on that is going to be really, really important.
Before we let you go, we really appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to doing this again. When I showed up at the press conference for the announcement that you were the new AD, I heard something. I thought I heard something about the name Eigenbrot and what it meant down in South Baltimore. Did I get part of the story right about the brewery? And
you did. You can't make this this story up. So my dad was born in Bowen Secure Hospital in downtown Baltimore. And they go back a couple generations from my dad. He's 75, I think, right now. And in about 1870, our family established a brewery in Baltimore. All throughout my college years, I had a sign on my wall that said Eigenbrot Family Brewery. So again, I went to school in this neck of the woods, the university. A lot of my friends still live in Baltimore. So this is kind of a homecoming for me. The brewery has never been a big point of contention amongst our friends or otherwise. It's just a thing. It went out of business around the Prohibition era, and the building has stood empty in Baltimore since then. My college roommate was a crime reporter for the Baltimore Sun for a long time. Now works for the Baltimore Banner. He just wrote a book called We Own the City that is now an HBO show. So he's Mr. Crime Baltimore guy. And
my nephew is one of the actors in that. He's playing the character Dan Herschel, Josh Charles, my nephew.
Oh, wow. Yeah. How about that? So small world.
And your roommate's Justin Fenton, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So Justin's my roommate. A lot of other roommates are what do they call those? Making cameo appearances as background characters as well. So we could point out some of those one night together. But he's a crime reporter. He walks out of his house. He lives downtown Baltimore on Clement Street, and he sees smoke. He follows the smoke like any good crime reporter would do. And Justin's lived in Baltimore since we graduated undergrad. No one's ever gone and saw the family brewery, but he shows up where the smoke is, and lo and behold, this is the day Dr. Schatzel is going to call me and tell me whether I got the job or not. And the family brewery is on fire. Since 1870, it's been there. So he sends a text message to our little group chain and says, guys, bad news. Steve's not getting the job. What do you mean? What are you talking about? The Eigenbrot family brewery is on fire, and he sends the pictures, right? So luckily for me, we didn't get too down because one of the guys on the text message chain is Catholic, and he's like, hey, hold on. The smoke is white. It just means that the vote is in. There's a new pope. There's the new pope. Maybe it'll be Steve. Let's everyone hold your breath. And lo and behold, the vote was in, and I knew Kim was going to call me. This was at like 9:15, and she was going to call at 11 o'clock to make her decision. So my phone didn't ring at 11. I knew it wasn't going to be me. And sure enough, it rang, and there was the history, and there was the story. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think it's still there, but I think it's pretty burnt to a crisp. So
pretty burnt to a crisp.
What a story! Wow,
that's a great story, Steve. We really appreciate it. When's the wife come to town? I thought maybe in the next month before she comes to town, Gary and I can take you out to eat some crabs.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
At the Costas Inn.
Let's do it. We got another month. Right.
Hey, I'll reach out to you. Thank you, Steve, for doing the show.
Appreciate you all for having me on anytime you want.
All right. We'll get back to you and do that. Okay. Again, we've been brought to you by the Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. Everybody in Baltimore knows the Costas Inn. They are now one of the preeminent places in town to go pick your food up, curbside, carry out, whatever you call it. Go to CostasInn.com and check the menu out and order it. 410-477-1975. Gary, got a little news about, we don't normally do this, but we're shifting again next week. Tell our viewers why.
Yeah, we got an interesting situation next week. We usually do our Zooms, as you know, either on Thursday or Wednesday. But next week, we're going to do it on Tuesday. That's the 24th of May. And the reason why is because we're going to have Don Zimmerman on, the former coach of Johns Hopkins lacrosse, UMBC lacrosse. He's now a commentator for ESPN. Well, the Final Four will have already been determined for lacrosse. And we're going to have Don on before he travels to the tournament on Tuesday night. to talk about the Final Four, lacrosse in general. We'll see if Maryland's still involved at that point. Big game coming up, Maryland, Virginia. So that should be a very special night.
All right. We'll look forward to that. And we got some interesting things percolating with guests over the summer months. All right.
Absolutely.
Summer weeks. Appreciate your being on with me as always, Gary. You know, I
You
love
got it.
you.
And thank you,
All right.
Stanley.
I'll talk to you all soon. Ross Grimsley and I back Monday night at 6. Gary and I with Don Zimmerman Tuesday at 7. Correct, Gary?
Tuesday at 7, correct.
All right. We'll see you all then. Bye.
See you then.